Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, if you see a smile on my face, it's not because I'm so thrilled about the current motion before us, but that sometimes in this Honorable House, we must appreciate the contributions and even the manner in which they're made by our colleagues. And I was very hearty and engaging presentation. Madam President, I stand here in the wake of my former colleague's presentation in no way, and I want that to be very, very clearly stated, in no way to oppose to this resolution or this motion. While it is still borrowing 19.6 million EC dollars, and I noted my colleague stuck to the US, which seems to have been a habit, and perhaps his background with the taxi might be the case, but he still knows the value in EC dollars. So I'll stick to the EC. 19.6 billion EC to be borrowed from the Caribbean Development Bank for the purpose of financing the water redevelopment program in Beaufort South. Being a Southerner myself, Madam President, any initiative that is going to improve the lives of people in the South will excite me. I would be grateful and welcome an initiative like that. And so I have no reservations but to indicate that this initiative is in no way anything but a good one. But you see, Madam President, there is an old saying, Haïtien dit dans blanc. Sometimes we have to give credit where it's due. And one of the things I've noticed is that there are some initiatives that this government undertakes, and in some cases there is very little acknowledgement of the origin of the initiative or the value of the initiative outside of the government itself. And I was very pleased when I heard my colleague made reference to 2015 when that project was conceived, and he mentioned that it was done under the government then of the St. Lucia Labour Party, of which I am a member. And Madam President, I think it is also fair to say that at that time, that project was signed off, and even the sword turning ceremony had been held. I commend the government, I'm not afraid to say that, Madam President, for continuing with a project like this one, like was done with the Dennery Redevelopment Project. But Madam President, my problem or my concern is, if water is life, as was correctly stated by my colleague, water is life today in 2021, and water was life then in 2015. And for the last 5 years, Madam President, water has been life. So I want to know, what is it that prevented the government of the day to have continued with that project upon assuming office in 2016? Madam President, this is the essence of my contribution this afternoon. I believe a water redevelopment project in the south of the island will address every one of the concerns that was highlighted by colleague Senator Jean-Pierre. Absolutely. I believe that this project, having been, the loan was secured, everything was in place, all the government had to do was to come in and continue. But I want someone to explain to me, hopefully from this side of the House, what was the reason why we have to be coming in 2021, in February, on the eve of a general election, to beat our chest about a project that the previous government had basically signed off on and was ready to go, financing and everything. I have not heard an explanation or a reason, a plausible one, for that strange or unusual delay of 5 years. I believe all the sectors that were referred to by my colleague senator required that assistance. They could have benefited from that project already. The people of the South that he so, he speaks of, that I also speak of, needed that service. And to come to the Honorable House now to talk about that initiative as if it's something that is coming from a government that is caring and compassionate begs the question, what was wrong with having that project undertaken since the government assumed office 5 years ago? So, Madam President, I await a reason. Now, I notice that we have, I am from the South and the Honorable Member is from the South, but I know that we'll all agree that there are more members of this Honorable House who have a keen interest in the South. And one of them, Honorable Francis, declared in this Honorable House that he is the endorsed candidate. So perhaps, he can enlighten us a little bit more on why this project is coming in now. But Madam President, I'll leave that for him to do. I know he'll be able and willing to do so. So Madam President, why is it that this took 5 years? That is my essential question. I also made one observation that was brought up by the leader of government business when she was giving a description of the terms of the loan. And one of those is a commitment fee of 1% that, in my view, may actually increase the cost. While the deal is a good one, that commitment fee was not really highlighted, but I think it can actually lead to an increase in the overall cost of financing that loan. And Madam President, another thing that I observe, and that has been mentioned before, is that these loans that we are taking, while this one was already signed off on, but I'm just speaking generally in terms of loans, we tend to say that, it's a good deal and we're getting great interest rates and repayment terms, and it's like a bargain that we should not let go. Madam President, again, I want to remind this Honorable House, and it has been said so today before me, that not because you can, that you must. In the case of this loan, I would say it's an exception because it was already on the books. It was just a matter of implementation that I think took 5 years too long. But let's be reminded, honorable members, that just because there is a good deal on a loan or on an opportunity doesn't mean that we should just do it and go for it because the deal is good. So I did indicate, Madam President, that my essential concern was not the issue of water redevelopment in the South. That would be cynical if I would say so. I welcome any development that is in the interest of the people of the South. But I believe 5 years, way too late. 5 years ago, you got into government, everything was on the table. Tell the people why it took you so long to continue with a project and to come back now and make it sound as if you're a hero and you're championing something that the Labour Party, the previous government, had already done all the work and put in place. When I get that explanation, Madam President, I would have no other issues with that specific motion. Thank you, Madam President.